Welcome to the Filmmakers 412 podcast. I'm your host, Michael Ray. Today's episode is with Brian Stowell. Brian is an actor and filmmaker. In today's episode, we talk about mostly acting and some of Brian's filmmaking projects. We spend most of our time talking about the craft of acting. Here's our interview with Brian Stowell. Okay, Brian, thanks for coming today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Tell us how you got into acting first. I mean, you're an actor and then you're a filmmaker in addition. So just tell me the story how you got into acting.
So my first acting experience was when I wish I had my mom here. I was like 8 years old. We went out to California. We were out in like the Hollywood area, and my parents wanted to check out the studios, and we were checking out the studios. And while we were there, we were walking by this one studio, and there was people outside looking at people, and there was this guy going, "Hey, your kids," and there's three brothers, are about the right height for what we need. And my mom's like, "Oh, what are you looking for?" And they just needed someone to be inside a suit, like in a hole in the ground in a suit, and just beating this bone on the ground and then just taking direction that they gave you. And my mom's like, "Oh, that sounds great, sure." So they had us do rock, paper, scissors. And I won, which is a rarity in my house because we're so competitive. But I won, and then I found out, and my mom found out, it was on Star Trek. So I was on Star Trek when I was like 8 or 9 years old. But it was my first acting experience. After that moment, like leaving that day, and like everybody was fantastic, like I didn't realize that this is something that I really wanted to do. Like I thought it was an amazing experience. I loved it, but I had a very small scale of what like it was really like to do it. So I went on and I grew up and I started doing like the musicals and all that other stuff. And then I went away to the military for like 10 years. And I didn't plan on leaving the military after 10 years. So after I got medically retired out, I came back to Pennsylvania because my kids were here. And I opened up 3 businesses around the Pittsburgh area. And one of the businesses that I opened up, the movie Southpaw came to Pittsburgh. And they asked me, "Hey, can we use your location for one of our locations for the film?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't have a problem with it." Like, thinking of a business owner-wise, you're like, well, like, how much of my time is this going to take? And they're like, "Oh, we need like a month of like time." And I'm like, "Oh, great." And they're like, no, it's cool. Like, what do you think about the acting role? And I'm like, "I think it's great." They're like, "Hey, if you let us use it, we can try to put you in there. We can see what we can do." And I'm like, "Oh, that sounds great." So when I was on the set of Southpaw, my wife came too, which my wife will never come to a set ever again because of that experience. But we were on a set for Southpaw. I had this little scene that I was supposed to do that never made the film, but we were supposed to be in the police station when Jake Gyllenhaal gets arrested and brought into the police station. And I was supposed to be standing at the desk and yelling and screaming at the guy at the desk to give me my keys because I guess my car got impounded and whatnot. And Antoine Fuqua comes in and he walks up the stairs, and his brother Curtis, who was his driver at the time, his brother Curtis goes, "Uh-oh." I'm like, "What's going on?" And Curtis goes, "I think this scene's about to get canned." And I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, I know my brother." He goes, "I just looking up." He goes, "Yeah, this hallway's not going to work. It's too small." So after a 14-hour day of just sitting on set, it got canned. So then they brought me back in for another day. I was like a featured extra. I didn't have any lines, but then that didn't make the movie either. But I made a lot of great connections on that set with like so many different people, like from the acting community that I did not know existed here in Pennsylvania at all.
So this was a local act. Like I'm not familiar with that film. So was that a local film or was it a national film that they were just doing here?
Oh, it was a national film that they were doing. It was supposed to be based in New York City. Yeah, it was, I think Southpaw, like Antoine Fuqua was the director, and he's done like Training Day. He's done like other big films. Jake Gyllenhaal was the main actor in that film. Who else was supposed to be in that film that didn't make? Forrest Whitaker was in that film. Like there was just a bunch of great actors in the film, and I really appreciated the month of being there and just seeing them do what they do. Like it was just unbelievable.
Huh. That sounds like a lot of fun. I was actually an extra for the Pickle movie.
Oh, yeah.
So the talent group downstairs, the guys downstairs, I just asked them to get me in a movie because it was on my bucket list. So they got me into that, and I'm not sure I was almost on the trailer because that's what I've seen so far, but I was almost on the trailer. The scene that I was in, is in the trailer, but they had me walk behind the main actor, Seth Rogen, and like, they do wide, they do mediums, they do tights, and for the real tight one, they didn't have me do it for some reason. I don't know, maybe my head was too shiny or something.
Yeah, you might have just pulled focus from the lens or something.
I don't know, but actually that scene where they did the close-up outside where I was, that's the one they used for the trailer. So I don't know if I'm in it earlier, so who knows. So, okay, so you got into this acting thing. Now, how did you transition, or why did you transition to filmmaking? Or it's not a transition; it's sort of parallel, right? You're doing both.
Right. So after my stint of an acting role, I did a commercial for Monster Casting for RCN Cable Company, which is in Chicago, New York City. I did a commercial there, and I did several other things, but I wasn't landing as many gigs as I thought I would, paid gigs. I was landing a bunch of independent stuff, but that's all relationship building. You make friends, and then your friends are like, yeah, I need an actor. You kind of look like you fit the role. And I didn't understand if I did fit the role. I just kind of said, yes, I'm the guy for this, and I just did it. But I got to the point where I was just why am I doing that? Do I know what they really want? Do I know what the scripts really ask me to do? Do I understand what the director really wants from me? Do I understand what the camera's seeing? Do I understand, what they're hearing, and all that other stuff? And so I figured, if I'm going to become a better actor, I should know these things. And I mean, of course, I can take the acting classes, on camera acting, and stuff like that. That's great, but that doesn't.
Have you taken any of those classes?
So, yes and no. I've taken some classes, but not they're one day, real short, 2-hour long class. None of the really involved classes that Donna Belijack offers, or Nancy Moster and them. It was just in Ohio with Angela Bowman. You know what I mean? So, but I've taken those classes, and I just realized after I walked away from them, they told me how to use my body and everything in front of the camera and all that other stuff, but I still really didn't understand what the camera was seeing and what the camera was looking at. So I said, well, let's pick up a camera and start shooting stuff and figure out what it's seeing, what it's doing. And then when I was at that, I'm like, well, we have these short films, these scripts written, the 48-hour film festival and everything. Why don't I just start shooting those, and I can be a director and direct people on what I want them to do. And maybe I can learn what the director sees and what the director's looking for. Because most directors look at the edit. They're like, okay, this is how I'm going to edit this film together. This is how I see the scene. So I wanted to see what they were seeing. So I just went ahead and picked up a camera and just started going to work.
Are you still doing it for your acting side? Or is this something that you've developed a greater appreciation for?
Truly in my heart, I want to be an actor. Truly in my heart of hearts, I want to be an actor, and picking up the camera was the greatest thing I could do. I think it made me 10 times better actor than I ever was. That being said, the process of making a film is absolutely amazing. From pre-production all the way through post-production. There's just aspects of it that you love because you have all the control in the world to make the story that you want to make, and share with the world it's original. That being said, post-production editing, that's the worst part ever. God bless those guys' souls. But yeah, for me, I mean, ultimately I would love to be an actor, but I still think after buying all the camera equipment and all the sound equipment and everything that I have in my house, I'm going to be a creator. I'm still going to create, work, and I plan to continue to create work, and I plan to continue to create work using only Pittsburgh people, because I think we have one of the greatest communities in the world right here.
Oh, boy. Kind of schmoozer there.
Yeah, you got to throw that in there every once in a while.
No, that's good. That's good. I think, I don't know what to compare it to. That's the thing. But I'm just amazed at the community I ran into. I didn't know there was a subculture of filmmakers, and it's everybody knows everybody. Just like you were walking up the steps saying, "Oh, I haven't met you yet, but I know da 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 da," and it's it's a real small community like that.
I agree. I was totally unaware of this community even existing when Southpaw first came to my store, and I was just talking with a couple of the background extras, and you start to find out that background extras' aspirations is to be a filmmaker themselves, and the ball just starts rolling, and through connections, all of a sudden you start finding out there really is a massive community of filmmakers right here in Pittsburgh that you didn't even know that it existed.
It's a big community, but it's a small world too. It's like, you'll, just like you, I mean, I've seen your face on, different format, like Facebook and Instagram or whatever, and I've seen your face over and over, but I haven't met you yet. And I knew it was only a matter of time. It was one of those things. I'm sure we would have ended up on the same set if this pandemic would ever go away anyways.
I'm sure. I have plans that I talked to Jesse about, Jesse Hutchinson, about collaborating together but filming separately. Like doing the exact same film, but he does it his way, I do it my way, and then having the
same cast or different cast?
It could be the same cast. It could be the same cast. It could be different cast, but doing the exact same film the exact same way, and then we come together collaboratively on like YouTube or something and have people vote on it, like which one they thought came out better.
Huh. Whose story would it be?
We would just collaborate and just create a story together, and then he runs with it, I run with it, and see what we come up with.
Huh. So I still don't have my head wrapped around who you are. Like, are you an actor that does filmmaking as kind of a hobby? I mean, acting is kind of a hobby to you too, because you have a real job. But
right.
And you just told me that your real love is acting. You would like to be an actor, but you're spending all this time movie making. And now, is that because acting's not filling up your time enough, kind of thing, or is it just a kind of a parallel course?
Right. So I see what you're saying. I'm going to say, if I had an acting gig present to me, like that I loved, I'd be acting all the time. Like, I obviously don't take every project because I've learned over the years that not every project's made for me. If I'm not the right actor for it, please don't put me in the role because the film's just going to be bad. You know what I mean? Or vice versa. But so if I had more acting gigs, I'd be acting all the time and do less filmmaking. But on those times that there's no present gigs out there for me, then might as well create my own.
What is the right role for you? If I was going to cast you for a movie, like what would you expect that to be?
Right. So it's got to be a role that I can be emotionally invested in. Like it's got to relate to me. Like I got to believe in like the story itself, like to the character. Like, like I said, everything is based off of experience in life, and for me, like being in the military for 10 years, like, when you get emotionally invested, you always reflect upon like the trials and tribulations you've gone through for your life so you can like emote what you're trying to emote. And, so for me, I've done like a lot of drama roles, like dramatic roles. And those are enjoyable. And it's like great to get into like every once in a while. But I've done like a lot of horror films. I've been like the bad guy a lot. I've been like a military guy. I mean, that's obvious. I'm like 6'3", 200 pounds. Like I was in the military. So yeah, that makes sense. But I mean, I always get typecast in like the police officer role, and stuff. I've been on Investigations Discovery like several times as like the lead police officer. Like, but for me personally, like I'm going to say like I really, really appreciate like it's hard to say. I just want to play everything. I just want to be someone different every day.
Yeah, I mean that'd be fun.
Yeah. It's hard to pigeonhole myself into what others perceive me as being because they see me as being the police officer and the military guy. But inside me, like I know I want to do those dramatic roles. I know I want to do things that are different than just that. But hey, sometimes you might just have to accept the fact that hey, I'm the cop and I have to play the cop. And there's lots of people that make a huge career out playing the cop on TV. So
right. Now, what would be your dream job, your dream role to play?
My dream role? Oh, man.
And with, like, the movie, the actress that you'd be with, I'm sure you'd be the star of it, but who would be your co-star?
Oh, man. That's a loaded question there.
Your wife's probably never going to listen to this either, so.
No, she's definitely going to listen to it. So I find myself to be a pretty funny guy. For the most part,
don't we all?
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, we're all humorous to ourselves, I guess. But I could see me doing stuff like with like Seth Rogen with them, with The Rock would be like fantastic, like his type of film because it could be serious, but there's a lot of comedy in everything that he does. So that's where I could foresee myself more closely aligning to. The actress that I would want to work with would be. Wow, That's a loaded question. That's a hard one. There's so many great actresses out there. Wow. If I was doing a comedy type film, maybe like a Rebel Wilson. She's very funny right now. Katherine Heigl would be fantastic. Wow, that's a tough question. Yeah, that's really tough. It shouldn't be that tough, but it's a pretty tough question.
You could fantasize about it tonight. So let me ask you this, speaking of fantasy, and I've asked this question of female actors, but never male actors. Like, how do you handle those awkward scenes where you have to like kiss somebody? Like, do you ever have to do that?
So there has been times where I've had to, and the first step is consent from your wife. That's the first step. But just discussing with my wife, and my wife most of the time like will know like who the actress is like ahead of time, and most of the time the other actor in the scene or actress in the scene is like married also. Like it's one of those things, and it's one of those things that you just do, and it's made in the moment, in the time. It doesn't feel that awkward because you're acting, you're just being someone else in that time period. But going into it before you do it, man, you're nervous as all hell. Like you're like, oh my God, this is gonna be horrible. You know, my wife's going to kill me. My breath's going to smell horrible. I don't know what's going on. Like 1,000 Tic Tacs later, you know, you get done with the scene.
When's the last time you had a first kiss? I mean, that's basically what it is, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good way to put it. Oh, wow. When was that?
Long time. It better be a long time.
It's been a couple of years. Yeah.
Because your wife is going to listen to this. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So, okay. What do you like best about acting? I mean, what is it that draws you to it?
Well, the fact that I get to leave my everyday life behind for like however long it is. The fact that I get to be somebody else. And I think one of the best aspects of it is like, so since I work in the education field, I get to study a lot. You know what I mean? And I get to study and I get to observe and I get to use data and collect data and like everything else. So when it comes to like creating the character, like there's nothing better than that, because then you just like, how am I going to act this way? Look at what other films are there? What other actors are there that have done roles like this? Let me research what they have done. How does this look? And, you know, everything else. And you just play around with it and try to develop this character that's just going to be completely unique and completely new and no one's ever seen before. You know what I mean? And, you know, when I go to set, like the reality of the situation is everybody thinks, not everybody, but a lot of people think like when you're being an actor, you have to be somebody else. And the reality of the situation is I'm Brian. I'm being Brian within this situation. Like, so how would I respond in this situation? How do I react in this situation? You know what I mean? Like when I'm met with certain doom, how am I going to respond? Not how I think this character is going to respond. And that way you get your actual real emotions and your actual real feelings to come out in the character.
Really? Because I'm interested in writing. I mean, I'm not a writer by any stretch, but I'm interested in writing. And one of the things that they all do is the writers they'll research the subject, their character. They create a character and they'll get a character history and they'll just develop that history. You know, they'll say what their quirks are, you know, like how many siblings they had, and they'll try to develop this character. Now, you're trying to represent that character. Shouldn't you be taking that data or trying to be that person? Or do you ever try to not be Brian? Do you ever try to be Bill? You know what I mean? Like this, you built Bill from the ground up. You know, he has, you know, a tick and you have to do the tick thing.
Right. So you add all that into your character. That's clear, but you know, that's what auditions are for. So we all go in there and we all audition, and they either like your version of Bill or they don't like your version of Bill. You know, so if I
usually don't know who their Bill is at that point, do you? I mean, it almost seems like you would have to have a long dinner and talk about Bill.
Yeah, just reading through the one scene of sides they give you, like, yeah, you don't know who their version of Bill is. So you got to kind of like read the scene, break it down, see what everybody else's motivations are in the scene. Why are they acting the way they're acting towards your character? Why your character acts the way towards, you know, their characters, and then just go from there and go, what else do I know about Bill that they want? Does he have a tick? You know, if he has a tick, then I need to find out where I add that tick in to make it make sense within this scene. Could it be when, you know, there's a heightened, argument between him and, his sister? Or could it, just be one of those things that is just innate in him that he just does, all the time, and you just go in there and go, this is who I think Bill is. And at the end of the day, like emotionally, your emotions are in it. So you are being yourself and you are reacting yourself. You just have to implement having a tick or, having, different stuff. So yeah, I do try to build a character completely different. Like if you got a heroin addict where they're, scratching all the time and they're...
You don't have any experience with that? Like you've never been a heroin addict?
Oh, no, thank God.
Okay.
No. I've never done any like drugs in my life. Like I've drank, but, was in the military for 10 years, like you'd expect that. but I've never done any drugs or anything. But when I owned my store down in Pittsburgh, I actually wrote a movie and a feature-length film, and the kid in the film ultimately ends up, it gets discovered that he ends up having a heroin issue, and whatnot. And I use the community around my store as I watch the heroin epidemic start taking them down as like my information, like how I was able to study that road, because I saw the best customers in the world that I had, like the nicest people in the world, deteriorate right in front of my eyes.
Really?
And yeah, it was horrible. Over there in Carrick. It was like in the Carrick, Brentwood area. But I was able to use that and go, when I'm writing the story, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to use that. You know what I mean? And I'm going to use these flaws, to build this character and to make you be emotionally connected to this character throughout. So when you find out about this stuff, all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, like what did this kid go through? Mm-hmm. And then I started talking to the people from the community that would openly talk about like their heroin issues and ask them like, well, how did you ultimately get into this? You know what I mean? Like you're such a great person. Like, I can't imagine you. It doesn't look glamorous. You know what I mean? Like, how did you get here? And a lot of them be like, my mom. She was an addict, or, other, friends, or, this or that, and so when I wrote the story, I'm sitting there going like, all right, well, I need to, use some of this. Like, I can't just make up a situation where this kid just ends up on heroin because he fell off an airplane on a heroin needle. Like, what I mean? Like, it's got to be real. And, I love it.
Have you ever done any research into being a cop?
Yeah. I mean, you watch...
Oh, there's cop shows.
All the cop shows on TV, everything else. I have friends that are cops, stuff like that. And being in the military, it's kind of like being a police officer for the most part anyway, just for the entire country. Yeah, it's not too far off.
So what do you like least about acting?
I think it would be all the stinking competition there is out there to land the role. No, I don't think there really is anything about acting that I don't like. Everything about acting to me is just amazing. I don't find anything to be, dislikeful for me.
Okay. So when you're on set and you're watching other actors act, and you seem like a pretty analytical person. Like, okay, I'm always breaking this down. How can I make it better? So what are some of the bigger mistakes you see actors make that they probably don't even realize?
I just think timing. Like, just in general, like, sometimes you'll see people on set, and, like, especially when I'm filming stuff myself, you'll see on set, like, someone will do, like, the best thing. Their scene, their dialogue, their everything will be just absolutely fantastic. And you're like, that's the best take ever. But it didn't get caught on camera because of how the camera motion was going and everything else. They dropped their lines too early, or or there'll be a scene where like they're just blinking a million times over. Like, what I mean? Like there's little things like, or you'll catch the actor that goes, I don't want to look into the camera. So when I turn my head from the right to the left, I'm going to time a blinking in between there. And you can actively see them like thinking about, I don't want to look into the camera here, and they're blinking their way across the camera. But just little things like that. Like I think most of the time when I'm filming and I'm watching other actors act, the times that I notice that we have to do the most retakes is those times that they're trying to be a good actor. like they're trying. They're responding like, as soon as your lines are done, I'm going to do my lines. Or they're trying to be respectful to the other actor and let the other actor get all of their lines out, but you can tell in the how it's written that there's little parts within the scene that it's okay to cut them off there. Like, it's a real genuine conversation. Like, there's times that you and I are talking right now where I've stepped over some of the stuff that you were saying because I'm trying to
I agree with you that like it makes it fluid, but it'll kill you in the editing. I mean, it just kills you when you go to edit. I mean, I don't have a whole lot of experience doing this, but I mean, I did this shoot not that long ago where I was doing sound, and it was these three girls, they're black girls around this table, and it's a cultural thing where they just gab like da 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 da, and I'm thinking to myself, they did all these different takes. They're not going to be able to cut that together because no one ever stopped talking. You know what I mean? It's like, so when people step on their lines, other people's lines, you're stuck right there. Like you have to keep with that edit. You know what I mean? You can't break it. I guess you could get a reaction shot and stud it. Yeah, but it's a killer. But yeah, I was wondering, as an actor, do you really try to not step on people's lines, or do you try to be just let it flow?
So for me, being an actor, I feel like when you're in the middle of the scene, what feels right is right. Yeah, I mean, for that scene, like if you're at that scene and you're having an argument with somebody and you're just being, no one just sits there and listens to listen when you're in an argument. You're listening to respond in an argument. You know what I mean? So you're waiting to hear that one thing that you need so you can fire back at them. And so in a scene like that, you're going to cut each other off. It's going to happen. Like in real life, it really does happen. And like only in those scenes that you should be listening to listen, you know, are the scenes that I don't think you should actively not step on the other actor's lines. But in just general conversation, like as you're walking down the street, it happens all day long. Yeah, I mean, so, but that's based off of feel. So when you're in the scene, if it feels right, it's probably right. Yeah, I mean, and then if you get guidance afterwards saying, that was awesome, that's great, but I need to hear these lines clearly, like from this actor, so please don't step on them, then obviously you take the notes.
Does that happen often? As I just step on your lines.
So I did a film called No Knock List, and James Quinn and I would go back and forth a lot throughout the film. I did another film, Body Farm, with Nick LaMantia and Brandon Keenan. Fantastic. Like, you ever have a chance to work with those two guys? Go for it. They're very, very talented. Like directing-wise and everything, they're just great. But all these scenes, I can't really tell you that I've been told by any of them, like in the middle of the scene, like, all right, we need to retake it because we need to get these clear lines. That being said, on the directing side of things, I have told actors like, hey, I need you, like this is important. These lines right here are like a pivotal part of the scene. Like I need these lines to be clear. So please don't like step over them. Like let it breathe for a minute. Yeah, I mean, let the crowd just see it breathe for a minute. And then in the edit, if we find like we want you to be a little closer to stepping on it, we'll edit that in. We can edit it that way.
Right, you can always make it closer together.
Right, exactly.
Where do you go to learn more about acting? I mean, there are classes. You said you really don't take those classes. Are there things on YouTube or anything that you can?
So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff on YouTube that you can watch, of course. My philosophy is if you're on a film set and you don't take something away that day that you're on a film set that you can add to your toolkit, then you were not doing your job on that set that day. So every time I'm on a film set, and it doesn't matter if it's a big Hollywood set or, or if it's like just an independent, like 48-hour film festival, type film, there's someone else in the scene, there's someone else on the set that is doing something that you don't know how to do. And you can always sit there and watch them and pick something up from them to better yourself as an actor. And I try to do that every time I'm on set, is I try to watch what they're doing and try to determine why they're doing what they're doing and how they came to that conclusion. I'm not even afraid to ask questions, like after the scene's over, like, hey, I really liked how you did that. What made you want to do it that way? And I just take that and tuck it away into my toolbox so I can use it for another occasion.
Yeah, I mean, I've asked a lot of directors if they've ever thought about taking acting lessons to make them better directors, but you're doing it both ways, really. I'm sure you learned a lot by directing that makes you a better actor. So they could probably do that, too.
Yep.
Who are some of the people that you really enjoy working with around here?
I just recently, on one of the feature films I'm currently working on called The Paranauts, we kind of got stopped because of COVID-19, so we haven't picked back up yet, but we will. But I got the chance to work with Jason Burke, and for the first time ever. And I've always heard that Jason Burke was a nice guy, everything like that. But I finally got to bring him on to one of my film sets and work with Jason. And He's like a beautiful mind. Like, he really does see things in a different light than I do, but in such a great way. You know what I mean? And I just really appreciate him. I already said Nick Lamantia and Brandon Keaton are two really good up-and-coming film directors for sure. Their film Body Farm was fantastic. It's on like every streaming site you can possibly find right now. Who else? I mean, community-wise, like director-wise, Jesse Hutchinson is fantastic. Matt Dialoulis is fantastic. Jackie Draga is fantastic. Actors-wise, we have James Quinn, Delaney Hathaway, Stephanie Swift, Rick Dutroux. I know I'm going to say your last name wrong, Dutroux, but Rick. I could go David Orgrodowski. Like, you could just go on for days in this small community. But I think everybody brings something unique to the table, and I appreciate working with all of them because I get to learn something new from all of them every time.
I know when you were younger, you said you did theater. Do you still do any theater?
So, at my school district, I am the director of all of the musicals that happen at the school.
Seriously?
So I can't sing at all. And if you want to check that out, ask Jackie Draga to send you the 48-hour film festival where I had to sing in it. It's like auto-tune like crazy. But I handle all the musicals, put them together. I handle all the acting side for like the kids in the musical and everything else. And of course, the music teacher handles the singing part. But I put on these musicals every year. I started at our school 4 years ago. Was the first time that they ever had a musical at the elementary level. And we're putting on musicals that are meant for elementary kids to watch, not elementary kids to do. And I have the wholehearted belief that our kids can do anything that those kids can do, like that the older kids can do. And getting them started now and getting their creative thoughts flowing and everything else would bring, more to our community. And these kids, honestly, over in Duquesne, they don't know any actors in their life. They don't know that, so they don't know that's a real job that they can get into. They don't know film is something that they can do. And I created a news crew at our student news crew where it's student run. The kids run the program. They do the research and find out what the weather's going to be, find out what the hot dog, we're going to have a hot dog today with the, French fries. I had them do all that, and then I have them go behind the camera and film it, and they have the green screen behind them. And then they have to go in and edit it and everything else. So I have them just doing everything there. So, yeah, I try to do as much as I can, like with the theater over there at the school.
But you acting? Have you acted lately in the theater project?
Well, I had to for my school because we did a Lion King, and I had to be Mufasa because the kid that was playing Mufasa got in trouble and was no longer allowed to be Mufasa. And it happened like the day before the play. So I had to be Mufasa. And funny story about that is, so I told all the kids, and they like to use the word ratchet all the time in the school. Like, your feet.
What's it mean?
Right. Like, well, that's what I thought.
Cool?
No, not cool. They're not like, cool. They're like, your feet are ratchet. Like, that's what they would say to each other on stage, whether, like, the girls. When they were, like, I'm like, well, none of you better come to, like, the musical with, like, ratchet toenails because we had to be barefoot on the stage. So when I had to be Mufasa, my wife the night before goes, Brian, you better not go in there with ratchet toes. And I'm like, what do you mean? So my wife painted my toenails orange. So when I was on stage, like, I was following through with what I told the kids, and all the kids were Instagramming and Snapchatting my toes. So then the next day at school, everybody in the school, district leaders and kids alike were running up to me you painted your toenails? And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I tried to wash it off, but it didn't come off. And you need to use toenail polish. And I kind of just played along with the kids. I'm like, I'm using soap and water. It's not coming off, knowing that it's not going to come off. But so we played it out for a week. And now I still have kids that have moved on to 6th, 7th, 8th grade that are no longer in our school that still come back and go, man, I can't believe you painted your toenails orange.
During that experience, did you run into any kids that had just unbelievable talent, pure, holy cow, I want to see if they're going to go somewhere in life kind of thing?
Yes. Okay, so this is kind of going to be rough. So there's this kid that was recently on the news. He's a kid that drowned over in Lake Connellsville. His name was Nadarius. He was from Duquesne. He did our very first musical. He did The Little Mermaid, and he was doing the role of Sebastian. And I'm telling you, this kid was so good. he learned his lines for the entire musical in like 2 days. Like, we're talking memorized. Like, and he's like, I don't need to practice it anymore. And I'm like, oh, you need to practice. Like, you don't just. And he's like, no, I got all the lines memorized. So then he did all of his lines memorized. Like he did have them all memorized while he was just sitting there. And I'm like, well, we're really going to test you. Do you really have your lines memorized? He goes, how? I'm like, well, we got to get you to do movement. Like, if you can have your lines memorized when you move. So I had him doing push-ups in the back room while he stated his lines. Didn't drop a beat. Emotionally, he's the kid that I called like the Disney kid. Like, he literally had, and when the kid sung, you got goosebumps from like every part of your body. Like, he was just absolutely fantastic. Yeah, it's sad that he's gone, because he was just.
Do you think he was moving in the direction?
Oh, 100%. Like, that kid, he's like a once in a lifetime talent. He was just absolutely fantastic. Like, I wish I had half the amount of talent that kid had when I was like his age. It was just unbelievable. Yeah, he passed away like not that long ago, like a couple months ago. It was just recently on TV.
Okay, in filmmaking, it's like every once in a while you just have a sort of an epiphany, and you think, oh man, it just strikes you. It's like it's something you learned that you didn't even know you didn't know, kind of thing. Did you ever run into that kind of experience? And if so, like, what was a more recent one?
I'm gonna be honest. I'm sure that's happened like 100 times. I'm sure that's happened like 100 times. Like, perfect example is what I talked about. Why I went into like picking up a camera and filming is there were so many times where I did stuff that I thought was fantastic stuff with my hands and everything, like manipulating, whatever item I have in the scene, and I was totally doing it off camera. Like, it wasn't really fully on camera. You know what I mean? And then you watch it back and you're like. I watch myself back, like, not all the time. I hate watching myself, to be honest with you. I'm like, I'm the worst actor ever. This is horrible. But I think we all do that. We judge ourselves harshly. But I always watch back and I always go, why did I do that? I should have did it like this. You know what I mean? Like, and it's just like, so those like great epiphanies, I think, from being on the other side of the camera occur more frequently for me now, because of the fact that I'm like, oh, I should, like, how Rick Dutcher is in a film called Vert with me, that filmed down in West Virginia. We were on set, and I had the privilege of watching him in the one scene, like, just make yourself cry, like, out of nowhere. Like, it wasn't one of those things, like, it wasn't like someone blew the little, menthol thing in his eye or anything like that at all. He just, like, before the scene, I just watched him sit there and deep in thought and psyching himself out. Yeah, I mean, like, getting into the worst moments ever. Yeah, man. And then gets in the middle of the scene, and then right before the point that he cries, he like takes a brief pause for a minute. And you can see like he just dove back into himself, and then next thing you know, he's crying. Like, you would never. You're like,
I could never.
I don't know how I could. Yeah, I have the hardest time doing it ever, and I think it's because of the military. Like, it's been beat out of me that right. Like, so I need that mental. But I watched him do that, and I'm like, huh. And then I talked to him about it and asked him, like, what are you grabbing onto? I don't think he actually really gave me, like, what it was, but it was, like, literally, like, one of the most personal, like, moments ever. Yeah, I mean, like, he made it so personal that it was, like, you couldn't help on set but to be like, that was absolutely awesome. You know what I mean? And I don't know. It's like big epiphany. I feel like I went all the way around the question without actually answering the question.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
I often ask myself, why do I like doing sound? Because I'm a photographer by trade, and I figured out what I like, and it's probably very similar to what you were just talking about. It's like when I'm booming, I'm right there with the actors, and it is really cool to watch this stuff happen. I mean, it's like, wow, is that powerful? And if you're doing mixing sound back in the back or something in Video Village, you don't get to see it. But if you're the sound guy, you're right there. Yeah. And I really like that about the sound.
And I've learned too, so from like booming, like I have like a little H4N1 Pro. Yeah, I mean, but doing it, like you're focusing on the sound of it, and you're focusing on how it sounds and how it feels, and it's unbelievable how like powerful just the sound, even if you weren't watching, like how powerful someone's performance can be just from their words and just how from it emotes from them. And it's I agree, it's totally amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I don't know really. I started doing the sound thing just to get some practice. And I've fallen in love with it. It's really kind of cool. I mean, sometimes you volunteer for a project and these people, it's like their first film and like you're sitting there rolling your eyes like you know what they should be doing, you know? Or, I mean, we all have different amounts of experience, so you have to allow for that. But it's just frustrating to like, I want to grab too many hats and wear them, you know, like as a photographer, I know my way around lighting, but it's hard to do lighting and sound. So, I mean, I try to limit the lighting part of it when I'm doing that. But still, I know if I just brought one light in here, it would, you know, because that's, with most low-end indie films, that's one that, like, sound is you know, they need help with sound, but they need help with lighting too. You know, those are like the two things. I mean, I think I've seen some great performances with crappy lighting, and it's just, maybe I'm just fixated on certain things, and like I can't let it go, but it kind of ruins the movie for me sometimes.
Well, we all have our own aesthetic. Yeah, I mean, like what we like and what we don't like when we watch something. And I agree with you. Like one of the things that I've noticed myself too, like when I'll rewatch a scene, I'll be like, that scene was fantastic. And I'll go back and look and go, we could have backlit that so much better. Like it would have made everything pop if it was just backlit. Yeah, I mean, and I'm starting to learn, like as I'm going through this process myself, that like the importance of lighting and how you light the scene, not so much like what's directly in front of your face, but what's going on behind. Yeah, I mean, the characters can make all the difference and all the impact on like the scene.
I call it the ladder of understanding. It's like, you know, we're concentrating on our step right there, okay? And we can see down the ladder, and you can look at people that don't know as much as you do, and it's obvious to you what they're doing wrong. But you can't look up the ladder because if you realized what was wrong with what you're doing, you'd fix it, right?
Right,
you know
absolutely.
what I mean? But it's like you haven't realized, like in hindsight, you look at the film and say, man, well, if I would have only done this, you know, the lighting was so bad, why didn't I do this? Or, you know, like so many people I know I've run into filmmaking, it's like they don't know what good lighting is. Like you could smack them in the face because they don't think lighting. You know, they're worried about how the camera works, or, you know, they're still working on composition, or, you know, they're concentrating on those other things. But I don't know, maybe that's a good reason to have a good team there. But
I think to be 100% honest with you, I think that what you're saying reigns true in like the community here and other communities that I've seen in the independent world. Because where do they typically start their filmmaking process? They always start with like horror films and everything else like that, because what's more forgivable in a horror film than bad lighting? You know what I mean? Like you see it in every horror film that you see. Like there's some that you can't even see what's going on, but you're still all in because the sound is amazing. You know what I mean? Or something like that. So I totally agree with you. I think that's why we see so many horror films come out of this community, and not so much like the dramas or, you know, the action, you know, based films or everything else, because we're not quite up to par yet with the lighting side of things.
You know, what's funny is I've worked with Jesse for a while now, and like the first 48 hours I worked on him with him, which, by the way, like PJ, you know PJ
Gaynard.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. PJ was like, he was there. He let me in the door of Jesse's house because Jesse was down getting the information at the thing. But anyways, we started working. Like Jesse got back to the house and he was saying, "Oh, I wish we would have had a horror," because that's like what he gravitated to. But now he's done some drama stuff, and I think he's fallen in love with drama. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's what he wants
one
to
he
do.
just did with Delaney Hathaway and Brian Saponis. What was the name of it? The singing one.
Straight and Narrow.
Straight and Narrow. It's just fantastic. That was like really, really good film. Yeah, and yeah, you're right. Like his drama stuff is probably so much stronger than his horror stuff ever was, because his horror stuff had a bunch of, if I remember correctly, like a bunch of jump scares here or there, everything else.
Well, I mean, it was, you know, like I said, the ladder. I mean, that's where he started.
Right.
You know, so now I think he's realizing that, you know, this is cool. This is more sophisticated. You know, it's starting to really work, and it's like, so yeah.
And his camera work is just fantastic now. Like it's night and day. Like how far he's gone with his camera work. Like I'm very impressed by everything that he's doing now.
Yeah, I really like him. He's a good guy.
Oh, absolutely.
So do you find yourself working with the same people as, you know, like when you do the filming part of it? I know, like when you're an actor, you're brought in, but like when you do your filming, do you have a team that you like usually try to gather together, you know, guys that you work with all the time, or is it sort of like, okay, I'll try this guy or I'll try this guy? Or
So right now we have a team of anywhere from like 8 to 10 people that we consistently work together. That being said, I always like to bring in new people. Like I always want other people to come in, you know, because, once again, other people have different lenses, different scopes on like how things should run or work with, and but I mean, for the most part, I think I've developed a core group of people that work really, really well together, because it's very important on a film set to get along with everybody that you're working with.
Those are long, stressful days sometimes.
Absolutely.
And you have to.
We had an 18-hour day one time in Donora, PA, at this house. And it was excruciating. It was hot. Like, it was just so hot, and everything else. But no one complained. Everybody was just like, this is the mission. Like, we're just going to go. We were all exhausted. I mean, we might have complained about, like, my feet hurt or my back hurt, but no one complained about the process. Like, they understood that we needed these scenes done that day because we only had that location for that day. So everybody bought in, but I think that's due to having a cohesive group together,
Now, these projects, are they strictly pro bono? Everybody's just donating their time, or do you try to work in some kind of budget where you're paying people?
So ultimately, I would love to pay everybody every time, if I possibly could, if the budget allowed for it. A lot of times it seems like it's pro bono, like and even when people bring me into their film projects, I have no problem, working on this film for you for free. Like, I'm going to learn something that day, so it's worth it to me. Yeah, I mean,
it's to me, it's like a hobby a lot of times. Yeah, sure, I'd love to get paid, but I just like doing it. Like, I'm going through withdrawal now. This COVID thing's just driving me freaking crazy. So
my buddy James Quinn, that I work with frequently, like he wrote something over the pandemic time, and it's just like a 2-person like little film, but it's just so we can get out there and do something.
Right. Just one scene or whatever.
Yeah, we're going stir crazy. Yeah. I think it's only like a 6 or 7 minute little film, but we're gonna go out there and shoot soon.
Well, if you need a sound guy, let me know, because I'm going crazy. I mean, I would really love to get out there and do some things. It's just like, I'm gardening and stuff I haven't done for years. I don't want to garden. I'd rather go out and I don't know.
I just rebuilt my entire deck. I got like a 75-foot deck off the back of my house, and I completely just rebuilt the whole thing, put up a pole myself. It's crazy.
So what's your most memorable on-set experience? Like something that sticks out as being either really bad or really good, or just like the coolest thing ever or the worst thing ever?
So we'll go to the bad side first. So we were shooting this film it's called Holiday Heist. It was like a short film. It's 2 Irish brothers and this girl that end up robbing these banks, and then we end up going into this warehouse because the cops are like kind of after us, and that's kind of where you pick up. It's funny. It's a funny film. And I'm not going to name drop or anything, but we had one guy that was new to our set, and I met him on another set before, and he seemed like a good guy, and he's like, hey, if you ever do anything, if you need me to PA, no matter what it is, just bring me along. I want to gain experience. And I love those type of people that just want the experience, you know what I mean? And he came into set, and like within 10 minutes, he broke like 2 lights, and then like he slammed my clapboard like he was like the Incredible Hulk, and it just like shattered. I was just like it was just, I started to realize like you need to make sure that the people that you bring on are self-aware at least, because he, like, his instant reaction too wasn't like, I'm so sorry, like I bumped into the light, it broke. His instant reaction is like, why is the light that close? Well, it needed to be that close, but he just backed up and destroyed it. Yeah, it was, right. It was, and then at the same time, which is a big taboo to me, is like, so once we were like taking lunch break, he went over to the cinematographer and goes like, hey, I get an idea, like for something for my reel. Like, would you mind filming something for me during this lunch break, like that I can do for my reel real quick, and whatnot. And I'm sitting there going,
we're eating lunch.
Like this is my camera. This is, my footage, everything else. And the cinematographer's just here to do this. Like, and it's lunch. We're taking a break right now. Like, why are you trying to impose on them? And then he just kept going, like, to the other actors, like, hey, so if I could get him to do this, will you be in this scene with me? And like, she's trying, I need her to be focused on who she's being. Right, like, leave her alone. So it was a pretty rough experience having that guy on set.
Yeah, you learned a lot right there.
Oh, tons. On the positive note, when I was on Last Witch Hunter, I was a stand-in for Last Witch Hunter for like the entire film. But being able to sit there and watch Rose McGowan and Not so much Vin Diesel. Vin Diesel, like, people don't understand. He's kind of like Andrew Dice Clay when he's not in front of the camera. Like, his personality, it's just kind of how he comes off. You know what I mean? But who's the other guy on that film? But I was able to just sit there and watch them work, and it was just unbelievable. Like, it was just, I'm glad I got to sit there for 4 months and just watch these people work and how they did it and how they went about the scene. And the guy that plays Alfred on Batman.
I don't know. I'm bad with names like
Yeah,
that.
I know. I know his name like every day of the week. I have his book sitting on my refrigerator at home. It's like an acting book, and it's fantastic. But like, he's the one that got me into the whole, like, we sat down and talked, and he's the one that goes, like, watch me do my scene. He goes, every time I do my scene, he goes, I'm the same person. He goes, no matter what I do, I'm the same person. You know, you can watch it. You can walk away and say, yeah, that's a Jodie Foster acting job. Yeah, I mean, like, you'll walk away saying, you know, this is me. He goes, if they didn't want me for this role, they would have chose somebody else. So when I walk in, like, so then he did his scene and came back. It was almost like his scene and talking to him as person, you can tell it was like the exact same person.
He wasn't fake at all.
Yeah, it was not fake.
I mean, there are some actors that, like, they don't have the same personality.
Yeah.
They're like, you never know who they're going to be that day, kind of thing, and they keep getting cast for this.
The Steve
like,
Carells, the Heath Ledgers.
Yeah. So I mean, there's that side of the argument too. I guess this guy has it right though, whereas I'm just going to be me, and I'll get hired for me, you know. And if you have a national audience, you know, they'll know that if they need you, you're available, kind of thing.
Right, absolutely.
But
right.
if you're in a small town like this, it's like.
Well, so I think the difference is here. Like, I don't think everybody naturally has the ability to jump in and out of characters like the Heath Ledgers and the Steve Carells, like, of the world that are like, because, like, look at Jim Carrey. He's always the same character. He just acts a different way. Yeah, I mean, like, different name.
My wife says that
else.
About a lot of actors. It's like, oh no.
Right.
You know.
But I think once you truly know where you fit in and who you are, like, and realize, like emotionally, is it easier to connect with your own emotions if you're just being you? Yeah, I mean, of course it is. Yeah, I mean, so I think for most actors starting out and everything else, it's just the using yourself, you know, and using your own true emotions to be the character. Yeah, my name might be Bill today, but I'm still me. Yeah, I mean, so I'm going to use what I have and just put it in the scene. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't like it. Like, I can't be worried about, did he like it or not? You know, once you cast me, you saw me do that. I'm going to do that same character the whole way throughout the film. You know what I mean? And they must have liked that at the time, unless they give me like little notes. But I think truly the best route to take, if you want to be successful in this industry, is use what you have. Like, don't try to be Heath Ledger. Don't try to be, you know, Steve Carell and these guys that can, and Johnny Depp, you know, who can jump in and out of characters like no one's business. You know, find out who you are and what you can bring, and then just go after it. Like, you always see the same guy being the gas station attendants on, you know, a television show. And I had an agent one time. I went with my buddy Umar. I don't know if you know Umar. Umar's a great actor here in Pittsburgh. He's like an unknown talent here in Pittsburgh. He's Pakistani, but we went to audition for PCG. It's a talent agency out in Columbus, because I can represent myself here in PA, but I don't have anybody to represent me out of state. So I went there, and we went out there, and the owner of the company essentially goes to us like, what are you striving to be? Who do you want to be? You know, blah, 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 like, as being a character. And, you know, of course, I'm like, oh, I want to be the superhero, you know, like everything. And he gets to Umar, and Umar's like, I want to break the mold. I don't want to be the stereotypical, you know, Pakistani, like, gas station attendant, this, that, everything else. You know, why not? And the agent said to him, goes, you know, I understand that. I totally understand that. But he goes, the best thing for you to do to advance your career right now is, I promise you right now, if you tell me you want to be that gas station attendant and everything else because of your ethnicity and how things go, he goes, if you tell me I can pigeonhole you into those roles, he goes, I can get you in a crap ton of films. I can get you in a crap ton of films, because we don't have that many Pakistani actors around this area. He goes, I can get you to do a ton of things. And I remember my buddy Umar, like, when we were driving home, and that's a far drive. That's like a 6-hour drive. I remember him saying, like, you know, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that stereotypical, character. But if you know it's going to get you ahead in the career that you want to, so he got met with like a little dilemma, and I ultimately he didn't go with PCG.
So how did he deal with? How does he deal with that day to day now? I mean, he'll accept the stereotypical part for himself? Like if he had a Hollywood agent come to him and say, "Hey, we need this. You're going to be in this film," he would say yes right away. But
I mean, I think
that's not where he wants to go, though.
Yeah, that's not where he wants to be. And I think the agent's point was like, hey, I'm not trying to put you in that stereotypical role. I don't want to put you there, but I can put you in front of the camera so you can show the road what you can do, and then as you build up your resume, you can slowly move yourself where you need to be or where you want to be. Yeah, man. And it sounds weird to hear stuff from people.
That's very typical in any career. Like, it's like you want your foot in the door, but you don't want to sell out at the same time. You have a dream, and if that dream isn't, at least you're getting in the door, so you have to decide whether you're going to do that or not.
Well, that's like at my school district. I was at the very bottom. When I first started working there, I started working there for pennies on the dollar as like a PCA, a primary care assistant. So I walked around with one kid all day long, and I tried to make sure he didn't have bad behaviors throughout the day, and I helped him with his work. And then I moved up to being a paraprofessional, and then moved over to the administrative side of the business, just being the attendance improvement coordinator, where I just focused on that. And then I moved up to the director of facilities, director of security. Then I held all three titles at the same time. And, it's just literally you got to get your foot in the door. And the hardest part in this industry is getting your foot in that door. Getting your SAG card is like gold at this point. And it's not the easiest thing to do.
Okay. That's really good advice. I was just going to ask you that question because we're just wrapping it up here. I was going to ask you, like, what great advice could you give? And you've given a good one already, but give me another one.
What great advice you give?
What great advice could you give someone just breaking into the acting world?
Great advice. I mean,
mediocre advice.
The best advice I can give to a new actor moving on the road is, especially in this community, is make connections. Connections are the number one thing you need to do, because through your connections, you're able to get more experience. And by getting more experience, you get to grow in, the road of acting, the road of being a cinematographer, the road, wherever you want to go in your career. Without connections at the very beginning, you're not going to make it anywhere in this industry. Like I did my first semi-national commercial before I did any independent film here in Pittsburgh. It was so hard to get into the independent road here because I didn't know the right people. But once I did make a connection, next thing I know, I made another connection. Next thing I know, I made a connection with people in West Virginia that I didn't know I made a connection with because of other people that I worked with up here. And then I'm doing a paid gig down in West Virginia. And then things just start steamrolling. So the number one thing you need to do is just make connections.
That's great advice. I totally agree with you. I mean, connections create opportunities that lead to more opportunities, and before you know it, hopefully you get where you want to go.
Absolutely. I totally agree.
Okay, so how can people find you? How can people reach you?
So you can look me up at Brian Stowell Actor on Instagram. I'm on IMDb Pro, obviously. My email address and everything's on IMDb. You can look me up on Facebook. You can hit me up on Twitter. Just type in my name. I'm the only Brian Stowell that I know of that's going to pop up on there. But yeah.
Even in IMDb, you're the only one?
There's two other IMDb's on there, but you'll quickly realize that they're not me because I think they're like 70.
So what are your current projects? What are you working on now?
So the current projects that's kind of on pause, I was working on the Paranauts. There's a short film that's coming up that's going to be filmed at Monroeville Mall called See You Later, Escalator, where I'm going to play like a Danny McBride type character.
I hear there's a really good sound guy on that shoot.
Yeah, I heard there's a really good sound guy on that shoot as well. And then there's a bunch of little other odds and ends things that titles are not quite put into place. But I'm currently working with Matt Dowless, finishing editing Who Do You Say I Am? I don't know if you saw that trailer yet, but the trailer's out there. We just have a couple, post-production things to do. We got to remove 2 names off of tombstones, and then that film is picture locked, ready to go. But just other personal projects, like I'm tidying up 2 scripts right now. I have 2 feature films that I really, really want to shoot.
Do you like writing? Do you do a lot of writing?
I enjoyed writing. The one thing I didn't enjoy is how long it took me to write. So my one film that I wrote, and I'm not going to say the title because I don't want you guys stealing it. The one film that I wrote took me about 3 years to write.
Wow.
Yeah, the feature, and I mean, like from the beginning to the end, like 120 pages. It took me 3 years to write, and that's because I would write like 3 pages, and then I would sit down, and then I would start doing the edits and going back and tightening up as I went. You know what I mean? And so now I'm at the point where I feel like it's a very, very tight script, but it took me 3 years to write. The other film took me 6 months. Not nearly as bad, but at the same time, that project wasn't as personally. I didn't have like a deep relationship with that film. There wasn't as much research that I didn't have to study like heroin addicts. Yeah, I mean, like I've seen a million cop shows. This film centers around a police officer with, it has to deal with social media and how we only get to really see like whatever the person holding the camera wants us to see. So this cop gets in this bad situation, and he either way basically loses his job because of what got caught on camera, but you never saw what happened before, you never saw what happened after, you just saw that 30 seconds in time that the person showed you. So then you go out throughout the entire film, and it's going to keep jumping back and forth from like a social media film and your basic camera film, like the whole way throughout the film, and how
I like that idea. I might steal that.
Yeah, we can work on that one together. I need a sound guy. But basically that same 30 seconds in that same film like got him caught up in the beginning. At the end, the 30 seconds ends up freeing him.
No. Yo, man, you ruined it for me. No,
it's okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in today. I really appreciate it. I think we've got some great stuff. There'll be some great advice for people trying to get into acting and filmmaking in Pittsburgh. So thanks again.
Hey, thanks, Michael. I greatly appreciate you.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay, everybody, thanks for listening. If you found us on our webpage, please leave a comment and let us know what you think. If you found us on iTunes or Spotify and you like the show, please leave a rating or review. And whatever you do, hit the subscribe button.